welcome back to NeuroDiverse Christian Couples. I'm Stephanie,
I'm Dan.
and today is our Christmas episode. We've talked before about holidays and how we do holidays and different views of holidays, but something usually associated with holidays or Christmas is joy. So we thought we would talk about joy. We are currently doing the 30 Days of Joy, which is the 30 Days of Joy for Busy Married Couples by Chris and Jennifer Coursey. So even before we had started the book, we had talked about a podcast called What I Still Like About You, because we sometimes when couples are in crisis and by the times they get to each other's, there's such a obsession with the marriage. I'm not really sure either one of them likes each other anymore. And so they're like, we have to save the marriage, save the marriage, save the marriage. It was like, do you like this person? Like,
Right.
how do we restore some like before we can restore or find joy, has said. So we're going to do What I Still Like About You. And then come to find out we're in our book. And one of the very first things is tell each other things that you like about each other, how you positively influence each other. And it also asked, so let's kind of first start talking about relationship circuits. It talked about, do you know when your relationship circuits are on and what's the difference? So your relationship circuits, you'll have to go back and listen to some other episodes when we did enemy mode. But that part of your brain that's in the right hemisphere that is ready to engage with people. So it asks you to think through a time your circuits are on, your circuits are off, because that's part of building joy with each other too. When my relationship circuits are off, and I'm not in a place I can engage, I might say something or do something that is not helpful to the relationship. So we, as you see, when we write a book, we first start ours with written and then we kind of talk about it. So what did you find in your RCs are on, your RCs are off? How do you know?
I think what I wrote down, since it was only this morning,
Right.
uh, there is a I called it wholeness. It's not an easy thing for me to explain, um, but there's not a divided mind. Um, I'm not trying to second guess what I said yesterday to figure out how to manipulate that into today, or what did I say yesterday so that I don't inflame today, or all of that kind of stuff. I'm in the moment, and there is nothing from yesterday that is dragging me into a certain direction. I'm not being led by something other than what's with me right now, who's with me right now. Um, Whatever activity we said we are going to do from chore like yesterday, or I guess Saturday, when we know we needed to do chore like things. There was things to do that morning just to keep there was no food in the refrigerator. We had to go to stores, things like that. But that was on the list, but so were some other activities. And it's that kind of anticipating all of that from we need to do the chores because that's how you do things, and then some activity, and then another activity that doesn't take up, we went to play pickleball. That doesn't take up your entire Saturday. And then the rest of the stuff that we had planned, we had time to go, you know, do other things. I think we spent some time just reading books. Um, that kind of idea. I wasn't dragging Friday into Saturday trying to wonder what is this going to shape into. You just got
So
to
that sounds a
exist
little
together.
bit, when I guess if you're worried or concerned about yesterday, then that sounds kind of like a fear thing more than a love relational thing
Right.
too. I'm concentrating if you're winding things in your head, what you could get in trouble with or what you could still be in trouble
Right.
with from yesterday.
And it doesn't mean a literal yesterday. It could mean all my yesterdays. What
Right.
are the behaviors that yesterday are still haunting me from last week to last year to last decade? And it is that, because from it's not just that I think I'm not going to do them anymore, and maybe that's true, but it also means that if they show, I'm not expecting the same level of repercussion that there was. It is, this is a call me to a better place kind of relationship, instead of, why did you do that to me? You always do that to me. right? It just feels, it feels different when you think about the relationship that way. When you're in the relationship and not in a fear, ask,
Of the response.
performance kind of activity.
How do you think this year we've both been trying to be much more intentional, not just having devotion, spiritual discipline time, but more connected God and gratitude and appreciation time? How do you feel your change from just reading and studying to more relational or connectedness to God? How do you think that has impacted our joy building by joy building with God first? And I don't know, what do you see or feel different?
And so that has been a dedicated mindset, is I need to start the day in a solid foundation of joy and appreciation first with God. And the ask in that is, as I grow that, to let that relationship grow elsewhere, horizontally, with people in relationship. And it's hard, again, hard to quantify, but it does, at least with those. And I'm not going to say that I like everybody in the world,
No, you don't. That would not be honest.
but for those in my expanding concentric circles, the desire for that relationship to be maintained and in a solid growing space, and to give the benefit of the doubt. Just because somebody does a thing or doesn't do a thing, I'm more apt to make up a story in the absence of something than I'm more likely to give you the benefit of the doubt if you hit me with a hammer than I am if you don't say anything to me at all. Right? I can understand the hammer, I can see the surroundings, but the absence of action leads me generally to make up a story in the absence, in the vacuum.
You're all about the hammer today,
Yeah.
and all kinds of examples. I think this is a good place to tell our listeners that um, you had the opportunity for an upcoming Just the Guys, which will be next month. The January Just the Guys was a little bit different. Instead of you and some of the usual the guys that are on the show kind of talking about things from the neurodivergent perspective, you had Marcus Warner and James Wilder on, Dr. James Wilder, who talked, I guess they're both doctors, and you talked through solution of choice, renovated, some resiliency with bounce. But um, if you're going to briefly, in a couple of sentences, talk about how that turns this into joy and relationship and gratitude with God and gratitude with others, like what's a thing you learned from that conversation that I was slightly jealous of that you had with Warner and Wilder?
There, wow, now you're testing my memory. Um, First, it was wonderful to be able to have both Jim, for perhaps from a more theoretical scientific background, with all of the science, brain sciencey kind of stuff, to to give a neurological foundation for what it is, and then at the same time be able to switch into a more pastoral role, a more spiritual perspective, a more practical perspective with the way Marcus did it, and watch the two of them land in the same place from different perspectives. That was wonderful to see, because it shows the number one, it shows the integrity of both what sides are saying. Here is the same idea: grow in God and grow in relationship to others, both biologically and because you've got a scriptural perspective that says this is what you should do. It just goes to show that God built us how we are on purpose and isn't giving us arbitrary rules. These are rules that set us up for success because he knows that we're built. So you can look at it that way, as this just a very holistic perspective on how man was built and how our instructions through biblical perspective and teaching lead us into a better way, because that's just how we work.
And I couldn't wait. So I listened to it like right away, right when you sent me the link, and it was great. And you had some aha moments that I guess when you listen to it again, you'll have them again.
Yes, I know you were leading me there, but I can't remember.
I know. So you'll be surprised. I'll be surprised. We'll relearn it together. But kind of tying that in talking about the left brain and the right brain, which is something that y'all talked about. The left brain is the knowledge based, right? So I could read Dr. Wilder's Joy Starts Here. I could read Chris Coursey's The Joy Switch. I could read Warner and Coursey's 4 Steps to a Joy-Filled Marriage and know all about those things, but that doesn't make me have a relationship that's more joyful with God, a more joyful identity, or a joyful relationship with you. It starts with knowledge and understanding, but if it doesn't come to action that is relationship that is actually practiced between two people, then it's a knowledge of joy and you've checked your box where I learned about one more thing, but um, so it was a great conversation. So that is mid-January. We wanted to start off the year with something a little bit different. And since we use a lot of Wilder and Warner's materials, and Coursey is in that same vein of material. We'll get back on track. So our first question in our 30 Days of Joy is knowing when your RCs are on and off. I feel like mine are on most of the time because of the type of job that I have. I kind of tying in the spiritual disciplines. I know my patience level is greater for difficult situations when I've actually had a more interactive kind of gratitude and connection with God versus, oh my goodness, I only have 15 minutes. Like, give me my Bible and devotional and let me get something done. I've definitely noticed that and a huge difference in myself. Because I made more time for it in the space to be interactive, and then I'm going to be a better relational person when I get on that call. And let's see, I'm likely to have my RCs off when I'm task or focus mode, or when I've got divided attention. Um, I know that if I'm feeling snappy or short in responses or not giving as much grace, that's definitely a sign. And I think I am not unlike others. I think many of us, if you're in the addiction world, it's hungry, angry, anxious, lonely, or tired. I think all of us, me especially, and hungry
Mhm.
and tired. If you're hungry, angry, anxious, lonely, tired, that spells halt. It means stop, because probably your relationship circuits are off because biologically, something is off. So it kind of starts, if you're going to build joy, there's got to be absence of abuse and absence of an active addiction. And then you got to know when your RCs are on or off, and you're responsible for that. And if you're blinded to that, because it's a self-awareness problem, be able to hear feedback from the other person like, hey, it feels like the RCs are not on right now. Take some time, decompress. But that brings us to, I had to write mine down because I was just too afraid I was going to forget and not be able to think on the spot. So we wanted to do back to liking versus loving. I've heard you say sometimes you actually like or appreciate it more when I say, I like you.
Yes. You have a choice to like me. Scripture commands you to love me.
Right. So um, let's just kind of talk about those things. I kind of combined mine. Do you want to go back and forth? Do you want me to go through some of mine? How you want to do this?
Let's go
Mine's
back and
like
forth.
2 pages. Okay, so I combined mine with things I like and still like about you, some things I've seen in growth, and then how something was there sometimes when we were younger and it's grown and morphed into something better even now. So the first one that was definitely noticeable even when we were kids is very high intellect in this one right here. And our relationships as such, I have multiple settings of seeing Dan because we were actually in middle school, Christian school together, plus some Sunday school and youth, and then classes and all that stuff. So um, I've heard you on business calls, Zoom settings. When COVID, I couldn't help but listen in every once in a while.
Because that's interesting.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's interesting. I know your voice and your tone on who you're talking to. You're like, oh, that's the boss guy. Oh, that's his colleagues. Um, but even though you are, in generally, the smartest person in the room, on the call, perhaps this marriage, you are not prideful about it. With your intellect comes a lot of humility. I was thinking about it because I was like, oh, I think this is true what I'm getting ready to say. I don't recall any time you trying to use your intellect to manipulate me, control me, do a superior inferior thing, like, I'm smarter than you, just believe me. Now, there were some spiritual issues there sometimes, but I mean, as far as the intellect, I really think you've treated people pretty equally. Um, I think you're humble about your intellect. I mean, there's sometimes you got to step up and like, I can tell in a meeting when you're just starting to get exasperated and you're letting people kind of do their thing. And then it's like, okay, we talked about it and the solution is going to be, but I don't ever hear just this arrogance that I hear from some of the people that I work with who are highly intellectual. They hide behind that. Their intellect is their whole identity. So, what else did I write? You don't lord it over me, squash me, or self justify. Um, so I feel like your intellectual ability with your humility, and I see you growing in wisdom. I can see you holding back when you need to and speak up when you need to. So that's the number one thing.
All right. Well, I'm not going to order mine because I'm likely going to make them up on the fly.
Yeah.
But I'll rhyme yours in a very Proverbs kind of way. And that is, while I also believe that intellectually you're smart, I think the part that I appreciate and have grown to appreciate more and more is a well-rounded smart. So to contrast, maybe I'm book smart, but I'm not people smart. I'm not especially observationally people smart. Heck, I can't remember what somebody looks like in the movie from 5 minutes to 5 minutes ago, much less be able to figure out much of anything else. I am also not good at figuring out what are they feeling. And this is a story that's as old as us, is you are. You can just see that. They're walking down the street. Oh, that person's happy. Oh, that person's a pedophile. Oh, that person's an acrobat. And I'm thinking, how in the world? And it might be that they're an acrobat because they're wearing acrobat clothing. Maybe they're in Cirque du Soleil and they're wearing the Cirque du Soleil stuff right now that says, I'm an employee of Cirque du Soleil. And I don't notice it. It might be that obvious, but most of the time it's a lot more subtle. Your ability to consume someone's surroundings, put them in complete context, make a really good holistic perspective of what's going on, and then summarize that with a high degree of accuracy over time. This isn't just like 3 times, over times, at least 4. Is astounding. I might be able to remember things like numerically, but I can't do that. And I have learned to appreciate. I've teetered on it and I'm calling them equal, but I think I'm ready to, toyed around with it. But to me, that almost is more valuable than being intellectually smart, because you can be intellectually smart and be a pariah because you're a pain, or not know how to use it. Maybe you're just naive and you get ramrodded by people around you that are otherwise. But you can be maybe not as smart and be able to read a room, be able to understand who's in what position politically, hierarchy of pecking order kind of stuff, and get way farther, or at least not get smashed.
Yeah. And well, that's a huge thing because we used to have arguments back in North Carolina that you used real logic and I used emotional logic. So
Yes.
emotional EQ is now up there with IQ. You're saying it's like at least both is best.
Well, yes, of course.
But it's a pretty important EQ when came up. Okay. Okay. Right. The second thing that I like about you is patience. Now, overall, between the two of us, except we're on 285, you have more patience, I think. With inanimate objects, with all the dogs except for that one, um, with really bad days, like, if I was kind of in a mood, me and one of the girls or whatever, you could kind of be the stable one. The kids, when they were learning new things, most of the time, they didn't really want you around academically because you like wanted to explain it in 2 seconds and they didn't get it. But like teaching them new things, like riding a bike or driving the car. And I was actually thinking back to when we decided to be more active, when COVID kind of, we were going to stay inside and go crazy, or we needed to go outside, and you came up with biking, so we had to get me a new bike. And I grew up in the pretty little cute banana seat bike, no hand gadget thingies. You stopped by reverse pedaling. And so this bike with gears and things on the right hand and left hand, and even the muscle memory of like, oh no, back pedaling doesn't do anything to stop. It's a handbrake. So you were super patient, and even kind of slowing yourself to my pace, because you'd been jumping off things and dirt biking like, all your life. But now you had a girl that was biking with you. So I thought that was because you could have been more impatient, because like it's easy to you when we did that one trail where there are things you had to pull up your bike on and ride really skinny logs, which I couldn't do because I don't have the shoulder strength to pull my bike up. And after you saw like I tried, you didn't try to like push me, because in the past you would have been like, oh, you can do it, let's just come practice every week and do it. But you heard my no, I'm a girl, I don't want to do that. I don't want to jump my bike off things. And then the second thing, we are doing pickleball, which you're Alta and you're on 2 leagues, and tennis is way, way, way in my past, like 20 years in my past. And um, you've been super patient as a tennis person, coming to the pickleball side, and then teaching me the rules and encouraging me. Um, so teaching me new things when, especially, I get frustrated because I'm competitive with my own self, and I get frustrated with myself when I can't pick up on it. But those are just 2 things in the last couple of years that I was thinking of that you were. And kind of teaching me how to drive a stick shift. And me not learning is not a fault of the teacher. I'm just not able to. But you tried, and you were very patient as I tried to drive a stick shift. Let's thank God I don't have to do that.
That's right. Yes. So I didn't think I was going to get to rhyme this one, but I'll rhyme this one too. There has been numerous occasions where your input has changed my perspective. I can think of one particular, and then probably ongoing in the last handful of years, probably pushing. I can't go back too far because I won't remember anything of quality. But it goes back to um, let's go all the way back to fall of 19 when I lost my job. You could have gone to freak out,
Which is my nature.
which is your nature.
It's my normal nature.
You didn't. And I can say this now, I'm not sure I could have said it then with clarity, but the perspective I had was that of, at least in some part of me, my identity was built inside of provider. You can argue that's probably not healthy. I don't know that I could have articulated that then, but it was definitely a driving force because, walk back to what that looked like. I made a full-time job out of finding a job. And you were encouraging, ensured that I didn't, gave me a day or two to, all right, I think we processed for a day, maybe 2. And then it was, all right, we can't sit there, and encouraged me to continue to move forward and not lay around and waller. I'm not that kind of guy anyway, but I mean, you were, the guard that prevented such a thing. And I look back on that, and it was really a quality encouragement that, regardless of how many things I sent, that got none returned, or whatever silly thing I thought I was going to, because I started finding some silly things to go do. Or even encouraging, I can remember when I had to make a decision. Was I going to go look for something that was full-time development and become a programmer, or was I going to go for something a little more risky and go for the step up? which was definitely, it was hard. It was becoming clear that I couldn't do both because the resumes didn't line up. You just couldn't. I couldn't chase that path and this other path um, with any kind of confidence that either one of them were going to lay some way. So when I said, you know what, I'm going to put down the development. I'm not going to go for a developer role, and I want to go for this more risky role. You said, okay.
No, we prayed about it. We prayed about it, yeah.
And that wasn't a Stephanie I always remembered.
No, 20 years ago, Stephanie would have been like, go for the now. Get that provider, get that developer job.
So that made an indelible mark of, wow, that's what it feels like to take a risk and have someone believe in you. And then so I started this direction with the idea of things I've learned. So that's one of them. Back up to just the kids, and it's um really an idea of what's important. You back up even farther than that. You go back 20 years, and I would say what's important would be at the top of my list, and you would have said who's important is at the top of your list. And I learned eventually to flip that around so that who is more important than what. So from a understanding a rightful perspective of prioritization is definitely an activity that I watched you observed and is a driving force in your world. And I was able to um, adopt in ever increasing pattern. I just made this part up on the fly. I didn't even think about this.
I hope it's true then. You're not making it up. I hope it's true.
It just none of that was prepared. It's just what showed up in my brain. To be able to regularly and continually adopt that perspective of who is more important than what, and then not just adopt it internally, but to be able to also express it, because all of your importance came out expressed. None of it was hidden importance. Oh, that's my mom. She's really important, but I'm going to ignore her. Right? I mean, that wasn't ever a perspective. You always lived demonstrably what you felt was important.
Okay, thank you. Curiosity. And since I've known you since you were a little boy, you've always been curious. Um, even even though you're definitely steadfast in your faith and your beliefs, you're still open to hear other people's ideas and perspective, which is kind of an uncharacteristic thing sometimes for autism. Maybe that's the ADD part in you. But you've always been open to new ideas. You've not ever been this is the way for always. You like if new systems, new approaches came up, we could talk about that. One of my favorite memories of you as a teenager is that Red Solo Cup challenge. When they told us, they gave us like a minute to write down all the different things you could do with a Red Solo Cup, and it was supposed to be about versatility or something like that. And I don't know, you had something crazy like 20 something options, and the majority of us had like 5 or 7. And I remember him kind of calling you up and like, prove it. And so you started demonstrating all these things with the hat. You made one a hat or whatever. And he's like, you can't do those. Those aren't real uses of a solo cup. And you said, what could I do with the solo cup? You didn't say what the world would do with the solo cup. So you didn't humiliate him or squash him, but you certainly demonstrated far more uses of that solo cup. What I've seen grow over our relationship is while you've always been curious about things and how things work and knowledge and systems and all of that, there's been a shift to family and marriage and me as a person. You talked about on the past podcast, from plant to person. It was a pretty important shift from plant to person. I really appreciate that I'm a person and not a plant now, and that you've switched some of that curiosity to me and how I work and how I think, and that my emotions are important and emotional intelligence is important. So that's been a nice thing.
Well, I'm not going to be able to rhyme this one. So one of the things that's true, one of the things I appreciate, one of the things I've observed is your sense of justice. This goes back well before I was ever aware this was innately high on your world.
Really? You didn't know that since I was little?
I did not.
Oh, wow.
I know. We already talked about how much I didn't pay attention. I didn't see, wasn't aware of the surroundings. You could have said I had a high sense of justice, and I
I wanted to
probably
be a lawyer, you know.
I would have read it backwards.
I wanted to be a lawyer.
Well, that didn't mean you had a high sense of justice. It means you wanted to be a lawyer.
Oh, okay. I wanted to be a DA. That didn't help.
Yeah, but I didn't realize how deep that went. To me, that could have, because
it's a root.
Yeah.
It's a root.
So anyway, I certainly didn't appreciate that back in the day. And I have learned to grow in such a thing. I guess in this spot, the two of us are very different in philosophy. You're a much more likely to be active and go do the thing. If there's a thing in the way, well, let's go blow it up so it's not in the way. I'm more likely to wait to see it erode. It'll go away by natural forces if it's not supposed to be there. That's just fundamentally one of the things that I think makes us different. And what I've watched, seen you champion, ensured, and this goes for all things, not just criminal kind of justice things. That is, somebody needs help in whatever activity this is. This is, let's take something that's close. Let's take something that's close. Let's take the situation of maybe someone with a disability in a school system. That is, and I know that if I show you a picture of somebody being, yes, we're ready to go. Let's line up behind and let's go figure out what school system this is and who that person is on Twitter. And that is championing for someone, that is modeling the biblical idea of those that don't have a champion need one. And this is the orphans, this is the widows, right? I mean, it is that whole idea of these are people that can't help, and you're ready to go stand in the gap and help them. And I didn't get that for the longest time. I was a lot more, though, I guess I was a little more deistic in the approach. Something will happen, you know.
Write a check.
Right. But I've realized that there is my idea of it'll just erode, while true in some cases, doesn't have to be the way it always is. There are places that I can, you know what? There is a thing I can write. If there's a wrong, we can make some action. We don't have to solve the whole world, but we can go do a thing. And here's another example of me watching whom you've been for the last 30 plus years, 40 years, and recognizing that the thing you've noticed, the spirit of I'm going to see justice done and watched it play out, has influenced how I view a similar situation. I'm still less likely to grab the banners and let's all just go run and, go beat them up or whatever. But I'm much more likely to engage in some kind of, you know what, that really is wrong, and actually call it wrong. Not sit here and play, well, I wonder what the last 20 years are that built up to that. When you see a wrong, it's a wrong. You don't have to know what happened all the time. That's wrong. And that's not a position I would take. I would always need an enormous amount of information. And you were able to call it, and did call it right there in the moment, and say, that's just wrong, and want to go create remedy.
And the impetus story, that was life shaping for me.
Kitty Genevieve.
I will keep her name alive forever. But if you don't know Kitty Genevieve's story, I was 16 or 17. I was in social psychology. And essentially the story, which is not a what do they call it?
Hoax.
It's not a hoax. I found the microfiche and saw the story in the New York Time, and not the Times, but a New York paper. Essentially, Kitty Genovese was raped, beaten, and killed as 30 people watched, had access to a phone, would not have been harmed, and no one called the
Right.
police.
Under the subtitle of diffusion
Diffusion
of
of
force.
responsibility, right? When you think somebody else is going to do it, you don't feel as responsible. And there was something that day that said that is no one's going to get beaten, raped on my watch.
This is
When
back when you were still a
I was still
lawyer.
I was still a lawyer. Yeah, I was still going to be a lawyer. I was going to do psychology as a minor to understand the criminal mind, but I was still in justice mode. Well, it's interesting you brought that one up because I think I find one that kind of rhymed with yours. And this came to me today. I was reading Dr. Wilder's The Pandora Problem, and he was going over the Good Samaritan story with some different details and ways of looking about it. But one of the things he talked about that each of the characters in the story had to count the cost of getting involved. And so I think um, over these years, while I have been a pick up the banner and go, and I kind of did my own work with one of my coaches on this, that it wasn't a martyr or savior complex. It was my issue sometimes was not embracing my limitations, maybe taking on too much. And that's been a theme you and I have been talked about me learning to embrace some of my limitations, that there are only 24 hours a day and I only have so much energy and resources to give. Um, so Dr. Wilder talked about in the Good Samaritan, he said, loving the neighbor is counting the cost, then compassionately giving, it will cost you, but not to the point of codependency. And not everything is a call to give your life and sacrifice. Not every single time you're called to get involved does it have to be at a sacrificial level. And so he said, true loving your enemy or neighbor is going to cost you, but you also need to know what you're going into, count the cost. Um, so I am definitely going to, if it's disability or difference or abused or oppressed, I'm certainly not going to not do that. But I think in our relationship, as I have embraced also logic and counting the cost, if I'm not the person to take up this cause, do I know somebody else who is? I don't always have to be the one with the banner or the writing campaign. I love writing campaigns. I love them. But I might know someone who is, and maybe my role is connection or getting that person to their next step. I don't always have to be the one that takes up the banner. So the counting of the cost thing that we've been, talking about and embracing more of the Sabbath. And I definitely had a vision, that the Lord was showing me that like the sea was taking over the sand and I need to put some sand dunes back up. And that's been part of encouraging me on the Sabbath. And while like you didn't always value that part of me, because you're just meddling in other people's business. But as you've appreciated that part of me, I think I in turn have appreciated, okay, I do need to sit and count the costs on this. I need to know, am I the person, I'm the resource, or I'm the connector? What is my role? Versus I don't always have to be the, general leading the charge. Although that's fun sometimes. I don't know. That gets me all riled up. I'm just feeling it right now. Just like, oh. So anyway, so yeah, I think it's a balance. I think you brought some balance to that part of my personality.
So let's see. So I don't know if I got a good word for this one. So since this is what I like about you and kind of an iron sharpens iron kind of perspective, I think I'm going to land a little bit closer to the I like about you idea. So again, go back long ways. And maybe this is a culmination of kind of everything that I've mentioned before. But maybe one of the best, I think perhaps one of the best indicators, one of the best examples I've got of this one is back. Erica was, I mean, heck, I'm so not good at this. I don't even know how old she was. When did Erica first get braces?
Oh my goodness, she was in elementary school, so like third or fourth grade.
So in third or fourth grade, I remember you said Erica needs braces. And I said, okay, that's an embodiment of the general idea. I had no idea Erica's teeth were in bad enough shape
Magic.
that she needed braces. I looked at her face and her mouth all the time. It never registered that they just weren't straight.
And you didn't notice that she had stopped smiling in all of her pictures
And I
because
did.
she was afraid to show her teeth,
So
which made me sad.
that is, in a nutshell, in a single story, the I like about you. I don't know what word this is, but you noticed. You saw that this was, there's no way in the world I could have appreciated this at the time. You saw that something as simple as Erica's teeth was now creating harm. It was a, it was a inter intrapersonal perception. This was, how do I view me? And we'll go back a little bit to the justice one. There's a thing to do. There's a thing I can do. Yeah, we didn't have a whole bunch of money, but at the time, we just made it work. Um, and that's just one example of, here is someone that can't do for themselves, at least in this particular case. I notice and I'm going to help. Now, it took a long time to get from here to there because, right, I mean, braces just takes a long time. But that's just one example, and I'm going to stick with just the kids in this case, um, because you fought for the kids in every situation, from things as innocuous as I need braces to um, going to whatever doctor thing they needed to have done. This is everything from, when they're little all the way to just before they ran off to go get married and stuff. Um, to the travails we had with Sydney and the incredible emotional, physical, temporal toil it took to fight for, to get her into a place that was good for her.
Pretty persistent, like a dog on a bone.
Yeah. And that's just the educational, but there was also the other moments of, this is what they like, so we knew what to do for a birthday party, or this is what they want and this is what we do for Christmas. This is the size of the birthday we're going to throw. They were events. They had ponies and things like that, jump houses, and if but they were themed and everybody came to, I mean, it wasn't a 20-minute, celebration and we're all done. This was a celebration of life.
Which you did not appreciate back then.
I absolutely did not.
Why are you bringing all these people to my house?
This is an example of, I don't want all these people in my house for my birthday. Why would anybody in the world want all these people at the house for their birthday? But that was an example of what I like about you is you invested in them, and now you look at what Sydney does for others. She invests in other people. She finds that situation. She makes soaps for people. She right. I mean, all of the stuff that's going on there. Erica's the same way. She's got that same desire to go help that's the reason she's in teaching
English.
She's a TESOL teacher. Is it's a paid it forward of, I'm going to create kids that love to help. And those are the smallest of things I can think of, um, because in the world of pretend, where there was just a me and there wasn't a you, the two of them would have been completely different on the other side of 18. And
Yeah, I think so.
I'm extremely grateful that you were there to guide, and lead them into who they have become, because they, all of us have a treasure and a God-given talent, and you nurtured theirs to the point that they are very ready and they're eager to watch it grow, blossom, and bloom. um, not want to hide or sit in some kind of shame or just absent of, nobody ever told me I was worth that.
Maybe I'm a treasure finder.
You are a treasure.
Thank you. I'm still processing. I think I got one or two more. I think something that has morphed, there was a growth mindset in everything but relationships when we got married. And in the last 4 to 5 years, as we've begun to embark on our own like spiritual disciplines, mentally healthy spirituality, and all of that, seeing that growth, and actually seeking more feedback. I don't know if feedback used to be scary for you, or it's like, well, she wants me to know, she'll tell me. But I think that's been another thing. And maybe that's as fear bonds and love bonds and all that stuff has changed. You've like sought it out. You've sought my opinion and input more. I mean, I'm a person who has lots of opinions and likes to give input, but you seeking it and asking me for it feels, like you see me as an equal, and you value what I have to offer. And sometimes you take it on and sometimes you don't. That doesn't matter if you don't take it on, but that, I guess, the growth in us and the investment in that, all the different things we've talked about, the humility and patience and curiosity, um, invested into us and our relationship. That's been a huge shift that I very much appreciate and like.
So let's see. How about ordered fun? So back in, this probably came out the most when we went to Disney World for the first time. Erica was, however old Erica
She
was,
was in a
4.
stroller.
Oh no!
She was in a stroller.
Even when Minnie Mouse got her kiss from the hand,
Minnie Mouse kissed her on the head. She was in a stroller.
but she wasn't 2. She was capable of walking. She just couldn't walk as fast as us. She got tired real
Yeah, I think
fast.
she was 3 turning 4-ish.
So that Disney World trip was to the minute on the calendar.
There were several reasons for that, but go ahead.
And so the reason this is important is because I was the other way around.
Right.
Land the world, we have to plan every spot. And it got immortalized for those of us that can still find the video on the way to Animal Kingdom, with us arriving before the animals.
We had to get first in line.
And
the guide said so.
And you've got the kids by the hands. Erica looks like a miniature Dotson walking beside a giant green giant, just legs moving like this. I thought for sure you were going to start dragging her at any moment. And I've got the video camera in the back, making sarcastic comments to the camera. So that's the humorous extreme side of this. You fast forward a good bit, and much of what we got to experience, especially in all of that kind of stuff you'd studied, there wouldn't be a Mickey Mouse moment or Minnie Mouse moment if we hadn't a planned for. One could make an argument that we didn't need it down to that level of minute detail, but that's beside the point of this, right? I mean, the kids had an incredible time at that. They still remember mostly, especially the no gluten part. But I've been able to recognize the value that that level of organization has, not just from a fun part, because that's what you have in the moment. What you live with forever is the memory of the moments. And we wouldn't have had that sequence of memories of going to Disney World, going to all the parks that we did, seeing everything, enjoying everything, seeing Cinderella's castle dressed up as Cinderella, all of the stuff we did. And that's just one example of the organizational, if we want to put any of our buzzwords in there, like executive function, inside of all of that without that kind of approach, organization, determination, and ordered fun, we wouldn't be able to look backwards over all the pictures, the memories, remember about videos we can no longer find, and relish in what we accomplished, what we did, what we made happen, because some of that wouldn't have been there without ordered fun.
Yeah, so a little bit of context if people don't think I'm total psychopath.
Just partial.
Just partial in planning. So Sydney was 7 or 8-ish, and she just had a bunch of school years where she'd been kicked out of school. She was still kind of in meltdown mode. So we're taking a child, an autistic child who meltdown, to Disney World, which is very sensory
It is
stimulating.
very too.
And she has to know what's coming next. So kind of part of the preparation was back then the Disney store had maps of the parks. So I got the maps because she, like her father, likes to study maps. So she liked to study it and she liked to keep knowing, and she liked to know the names of the parks and the rides that were in each world. And she needed to know how to get from one to the other because you can't get to all the worlds from all the places, right? And she wanted to know how you got there by train, how you got there by the sky thing, how you got there, whatever ways to get there. She needed to know this information to keep her anxiety down. So it was kind of a pre-regulation thing. And then also she's just highly visual. So I got the VHS tapes. There were some sing-along VHS tapes where they were performing in the park. So she could see the park and see how big the character was and what the buildings looked like. She just really, to help with her anxiety and not knowing, there was a lot of prep work. And then we had 2 girls, one who was highly into princesses and one who was highly into Minnie Mouse. So making sure they each had their equal share. And then the most fun part is they had both been started gluten-free, dairy-free, and Feingold, which Feingold is no sugar, no color, not even corn syrup.
Yeah. You can eat honey on your dirt.
So then you're going to a theme park and having to locate every single restaurant with every single part that you could have something to eat. That was fun in every single one. So that, yes, that took a lot of planning, but that was super fun to plan too. I like planning. I love organizing.
But I think you just gave me another example of one I didn't think of, with just how well you knew the kids, such that such an event like that could be true. You have to really know who they are, what they can do, what they can't do, what they need. And the trip to Disney World for us didn't start when we got in the car. It started weeks and weeks and weeks before that, because we needed to set the stage for how does Disney World work with us.
All right, so I'm going to rhyme that one. When we first got married, you were not fun to travel with. And I did some trips without you, baby. I think when we would have those discussions, like it wasn't a priority, the funds were never there. I mean, but I found a free deal. If I found a 3-day, 2-night free anything, like we listened to timeshares all over the nation for 10 years. We know all the timeshare programs. And you didn't value it very much, and you were not always a happy traveler. But now traveling is a part of a huge thing that we do together for rest, for joy building, for work. Sabbath time, for work. And we've really figured out how to make that an us thing, not just Stephanie's dragging Dan along thing. Not doing mommy Saurus, I think is what you called me in Disney World. I think you get some enjoyment out of our travel as well. That maybe that's a thing I've influenced you on, but you've also, I think, appreciated more. Yes. And I like to travel with you. And you've actually taken over. You're now the person who does the plane trips and that gets the Uber and picks the hotel. So you've also taken over some mental load of that too. So that's highly appreciated.
I think I'm out of ideas.
Well, I think that's good. So we hope that as you've listened today, sometimes people, there's actually a comment on a Facebook page that said something about Stephanie and Dan. Are they just pretending to like each other because they're like some big ministry? We are not a big ministry. It is us. If you get an email,
that's our real tree.
This is our real Christmas tree. It's not a stage or a prop. That's why sometimes it takes me a long time to get an email to you, because I'm actually responding to the emails and we do our podcast. And right now it is Zoom and a Yeti mic. Although in 2025, y'all, someone did donate some money. So in 2025, we'll be kind of upgrading some of the technology so I can stop with getting all the advice about what mics to use and the sound quality and all that good stuff. It's coming in 2025. And thanks for joining us for this thing. For the podcast this year, we're going to post what's been the most listened to podcast ending the year. Maybe some of you are familiar with Sarah McDougall, and she's found out she was neurodivergent later in life, and she'll be one of our last interviews for the show this year. So we hope you have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year.
All right, everybody, do good at your things.
Do good. All right, what about our actual send off of There's Hope for Your Future and
You're not alone on your journey.
right, and we haven't been alone on our journey either. All right, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, y'all.